my sister told me. Nobody wants you here, you're just extra mouth to feed. I smiled and packed my bags. Last night she showed up at my apartment crying because she stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp like broken glass, and said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Nobody wants you here. You're just an extra mouth to feed. At first, I thought I'd misheard her. Maybe I had water in my ears from doing the dishes. But no, she meant it. My sister Claire, with whom I'd been staying for the past 3 weeks, had finally said the quiet part out loud. I just stood there, dish towel still in my hand, letting her words hang in the air. She didn't even blink. Her boyfriend, Brent, sitting at the kitchen table, didn't look up from his phone. The silence was louder than the insult. I smiled. Not out of amusement. It was the kind of smile you make when you realize you've hit bottom and there's no one left to disappoint but yourself. Okay, I said, voice steady. I walked to the guest room, the one she offered when I'd lost my job and couldn't keep up with rent. Packed my bag. 1 bag. Left the toothbrush in the bathroom, too small to bother, and zipped it shut. I didn't slam the door, didn't raise my voice, didn't even look back. Her words echoed as I left. You're just extra. Not unfortunate. Not having a rough time. Just extra. Wait. When I stepped into the evening air, the sky was a bruised purple, and the air tasted like rain that never quite arrived. It hit me how quiet it was out there. No one yelling. No TV blaring. Just me and my bag and a $20 bill in my wallet. There was nowhere to go. But I went anyway. Truth is, I should have seen it coming. Long before the words hit the air like poison, there were signs. Quiet ones. When I moved in, Claire hugged me tight and said, "Your family, don't worry about anything." She even made up the guest room with new sheets and that lavender candle she always saved for when company came. I should have known then, it wasn't meant for me. I wasn't company. I was inconvenience wrapped in hope. It started small. Real small. She'd open the fridge and sigh when something was gone. Like visibly sigh. Loud enough for me to hear in the other room. She started labeling food. Brent would make these offhand jokes about deadbeats who treat couches like thrones. I laughed the first time. Thought it was about one of his friends. It wasn't. Then there was the morning I overheard her on the phone. She thought I was still asleep. Her voice was low but tight. "He's still here." "No, I don't know when he's leaving. I told him it was temporary." "What am I supposed to do, just kick him out?" A pause. Then a laugh, cold and brittle. "I swear, it's like taking care of a grown child." That one stuck with me. I started taking longer walks, coming back late just to avoid being in the way. I applied to anything: restaurants, warehouses, temp agencies. Got a job bagging groceries during the day and washing dishes at night. I didn't tell her. I figured I'd surprise her with my first paycheck. Stupid, right? Like a kid trying to get a gold star. And still, every day, I came back to that house walking on eggshells. I'd clean dishes that weren't mine, leave cash on the counter when I could, try not to take up space. Like somehow I could shrink my existence enough to make her like me again. But that wasn't what she wanted. Claire didn't want me smaller. She wanted me gone. It happened on a Thursday. Nothing special about it. Sky was gray, the heater was clicking like it always did, and I'd just gotten home from a double shift. My feet hurt, and my jacket still smelled like fryer grease. Claire was in the kitchen, reheating something in the microwave. I walked in, nodded, and said, "Hey." She didn't look at me. That was normal by then. I reached into the cabinet for a glass. That's all I did. 1 glass. She turned on me like I'd smashed the thing against the wall. "Can you not touch everything for once?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut bone. I froze. Brent looked up from the living room with that smug half-smile of his. The kind of expression people wear when they're waiting for a car crash. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then Claire kept going. "Do you even get how exhausting this is? You're always here. Always in the way. Using the bathroom, eating our food, watching our TV like it's yours. You don't pay rent, you don't help around here, and now I come home every day wondering what I'll find. I blinked. I just cleaned the kitchen this morning. And I've been working? She cut me off, laughing once, bitter. Bagging groceries and washing dishes? Come on. You're not rebuilding your life. You're just prolonging failure. And then the nail in the coffin. Nobody wants you here. You're just an extra mouth to feed. Silence. Even Brent looked surprised at how far she went. I looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, something in me cracked, but not in the way she expected. There was no rage. No pleading. Just peace. Cold, clear, painful peace. I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I finally understood. All right, I said softly. I turned, walked to the guest room, packed my things. The bag was already half full from how often I'd thought about doing this. A few clothes, a notebook, my phone charger. I zipped it up, grabbed my coat, and walked right past them without a word. As I opened the door, Claire finally said, "So that's it? You're just walking away?" I didn't even turn around. "You told me nobody wants me here," I said. "So I'm doing what you want." And then I left. I didn't have a plan when I left Claire's house that night. No big speech, no final word. Just my duffel bag over my shoulder, and the hollow sound of her door clicking shut behind me. I walked to the bus stop. I didn't even know where I was going, just somewhere that wasn't there. I had $42 to my name. $42, no apartment, and a resume that read like a warning sign. But I had one thing I hadn't had in a long time. Freedom. I slept on a friend's couch for a week. Then another friend's floor. Then I stopped asking. I started taking overnight shifts, janitorial work at a hospital, stacking pallets in a warehouse before dawn. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't make for great Instagram posts or heartwarming family group texts. But it was mine. Every hour I worked was an hour further from that kitchen. From that insult. From the version of me who stood there and let it happen. I kept my head down. Saved every dollar I could. Ate cheap meals, skipped takeout, wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. I made coffee at home in a chipped mug from Goodwill. I didn't complain. And slowly, painfully, something shifted. I got a call one afternoon while eating lunch on the loading dock. A manager from the grocery store, one I used to work at, had moved to a different chain and wanted to bring me on as assistant shift lead. "Figured you deserved a break," he said. "You always showed up, even when no one else did." It wasn't much. But it felt like everything. Within 2 months, I had my own studio apartment. Nothing fancy, a converted garage with pipes that groaned and a heater that wheezed, but the key was mine. Mine. The first night I slept there, I didn't unpack. Just lay on the mattress, no frame, staring at the ceiling. Listening to the quiet. No one sighing from the other room. No footsteps of someone trying to avoid me. Just peace. I was no longer the extra mouth. It had been 4 months since I'd walked out of Claire's house. 4 months since I'd eaten her food, slept under her roof, or been reminded daily of what a failure I was. In those 4 months, I worked like a man possessed. I never missed a shift. I picked up extras when someone called in. Some nights, I'd come home just long enough to shower and collapse into bed, clothes still damp from sweat. But every dollar counted. Every box I lifted, every aisle I swept, it built the life she said I couldn't have. Eventually, I stopped thinking about her. About Brent. About that kitchen. Not out of anger, but necessity. You can't climb when you're staring at the people who kick dirt on you. The studio came together piece by piece. A second-hand couch from a guy moving out of town. A coffee table made from crates I found behind the store. A tiny TV I found on sale for $30. I even framed one of my old pay stubs, the first one from when I started both jobs, and hung it on the wall like a badge of survival. And then, just last night, came the knock. It was late. I'd just taken off my shoes and was heating up some leftover stir-fry when I heard it. Not the casual knock of a delivery guy. This one was anxious, rapid, almost desperate. I opened the door, and there she was. Claire. Her makeup was smeared, mascara dripping like black vines down her cheeks. Her sweater hung off one shoulder, like she'd thrown it on in a rush. She was holding a single bag, the same one I used to carry, clutched to her chest like a shield. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, eyes bloodshot and puffy, and whispered, "Can I come in?" I stared at her for a moment, saying nothing. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because in that second, I wasn't that broken man with a duffel bag anymore. I was someone who had rebuilt his life from ash. And she was someone who had just stepped into the fire. I stepped aside, slowly, and let her in. She walked in like a ghost, looking around my little place as if she'd expected me to still be on someone's floor, still begging for help. Instead, she saw a coffee table, clean dishes drying in the rack, and folded clothes on a chair. My life, pieced back together. She sat on the edge of the couch and finally broke. "Brent kicked me out," she said, her voice shaking. "He found someone else. Took my keys. Said I was too much." I didn't say anything. She kept going. "My card's maxed. I called Jen and Lindsay, but they didn't answer. I don't have anywhere else to go." I sat across from her, elbows on my knees. Quiet. "Do you remember what you said?" I asked finally. She looked up, confused. "What?" "That night. In the kitchen. You said nobody wants you here. You're just an extra mouth to feed. Remember?" She blinked, stunned. Then nodded slowly. I let the silence stretch long. Let her sit in it. She squirmed under it, just like I had months ago. "I didn't mean it," she whispered. "Yes, you did," I said. "And that's okay. You meant it. And I heard you." She started crying again, quieter this time. Not for drama. Just pain. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with a blanket. Laid it on the couch. "You can sleep here," I said. "Just for tonight." She looked up, surprised. "But tomorrow," I continued, "you figure things out. This isn't a safe haven. And I'm not the extra anymore." Claire nodded, eyes wide with understanding. As I turned to head to bed, I heard her whisper something behind me. I didn't turn around. I think it was, "I'm sorry." But I'd stopped needing an apology. I woke before sunrise. Not out of habit, though my body had learned to rise with the dark, but because the air felt different. Heavier. Like the past had slipped under the door during the night and made itself comfortable in the corner of the room. I stepped into the living area quietly. Claire was asleep on the couch, curled up under the blanket I'd given her, face puffy from the tears. Her bag sat beside her, untouched. She looked small. Deflated. Like someone who had finally run out of cleverness and excuses. I started the kettle and made 2 mugs of instant coffee. Cheap stuff, but warm. Comforting, in a way that words rarely are. When she stirred, she looked around, momentarily disoriented. Then her eyes met mine, and I saw it, the shame, the gratitude, the cautious hope that maybe I hadn't hardened completely. I handed her a mug. She took it carefully, both hands wrapped around the ceramic like it might fall apart if she wasn't gentle. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded, sat across from her. "I won't stay long," she added quickly. "I'll figure something out today. I don't want to be a burden." There it was, that word. Burden. The very thing she once accused me of being. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just sipped the coffee. Let the moment breathe. Finally I said, "You know, I never blamed you for not having space. People struggle. Life's messy. But you didn't have to humiliate me to make room." She nodded slowly, eyes wet again. "You didn't deserve that," she said. I thought if I kept things tough, it would push you to leave. I didn't expect you to actually smile and walk out like that. I didn't expect you to shove me out either," I replied. She winced, but didn't defend herself. That, at least, was new. "I slept better last night than I have in months," she admitted. I don't know what that says about me. I shrugged. Maybe it says you've finally stopped pretending. We sat in silence again. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either. Just honest. After a while, she stood up, folded the blanket, and set her mug in the sink. I'll be out by noon, she said. Noon's fine, I replied. She lingered at the door for a second, as if expecting me to say more. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about dignity. She left a few hours later without another word. And I didn't watch from the window. Didn't wonder where she'd go. I just picked up the mug she left, washed it clean, and put it back in the cupboard. Back in its place. Like everything else in my life now. After Claire left, the apartment felt unnaturally still. Not quiet in the peaceful way I'd grown used to. Not like the low hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the pipes. No, this was the kind of silence that settles into your bones. A silence that has a shape. One that wraps itself around your shoulders and asks, so what now? I didn't clean right away. Didn't touch the folded blanket. Didn't rinse her mug again even though I usually would. I just sat there at the kitchen table, fingers curled around a new cup of coffee, staring at the front door like it might open again. But it didn't. And that was the whole point. She left the same way I once did, head down, no ceremony. But the difference? I hadn't had a choice. She did. I'd been pushed out like clutter. She had to ask her way back in. And maybe that's what hurt her most. The silence stretched on for days. Not a single text. No apology message. No. Thanks again. I thought maybe she'd try. Part of me expected her to. But maybe she knew better. Maybe, for the first time, she understood that some bridges don't burn in fire. They burn in silence. I went back to work like nothing happened. Picked up the same routines. Same shifts. Same grocery list. But something had shifted inside. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just gravity. I found myself more focused, more deliberate. I started writing again, just scraps of thought in a cheap notebook, stuff I hadn't touched since college. Little things about what it feels like to be forgotten, then remembered. Then chosen. Even if the only person choosing you is yourself. And at night, when I turned out the lights, I didn't feel alone. I felt unburdened. She had given me a strange gift in the end. Not closure, not forgiveness. But clarity. She had to knock on my door to realize what it felt like to be the one outside. A week after Claire left, I did something I hadn't done in years. I bought a plant. Nothing fancy, just a little pothos in a white ceramic pot. The guy at the hardware store said they were hard to kill. That sounded like my speed. Resilient. Quiet. Just needs a little light and water to keep going. Kind of like me. I set it on the windowsill, right where the morning sun hits for a few hours. It was a small thing, but it meant something. It meant I expected to be here. Not just passing through. Not surviving, but staying. Work was steady. I'd earned the respect of my manager, even trained a few new hires. At night I kept writing. Nothing profound. No grand memoir. Just honest words about what it meant to be invisible to people who should have seen you. Sometimes I'd go on long walks through the neighborhood, rows of apartments like mine, quiet couples arguing through windows, someone always burning something in the kitchen. It felt real. Uncurated. And then one evening I met Maya. She lived 2 floors down. We ran into each other at the laundromat when I dropped a sock and she stepped on it by accident. We both laughed, really laughed, and ended up talking through the whole wash cycle. She worked as a vet tech, loved sad music, and had an old soul kind of humor that caught me off guard. We started grabbing coffee after our laundry nights. Nothing serious at first. But it felt easy. Like I didn't have to prove anything. One night I told her about Claire. Not the whole saga, just enough. Enough to explain the scar without showing the stitches. She didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer platitudes. She just said, "Sounds like you've built something stronger out of it." That stuck with me. Not healed. Not better. Stronger. It happened on a Tuesday. One of those sleepy, overcast afternoons where the sky hangs low and everything feels a little softer, like the world's trying not to wake you up too fast. I was walking back from the corner bodega with a loaf of bread, a six-pack of ginger ale, and Maya's favorite brand of licorice she kept, accidentally, leaving at my place. We just started calling it our place in passing, half joking. But the more it slipped out, the less it felt like a joke. When I got inside, there it was, my phone on the counter, lit up with a notification. One new voicemail. Unknown number. I didn't think much of it. Scams were common. Robocalls even more so. But something, instinct maybe, told me to listen. I tapped play. The voice was muffled. Strained. But familiar. Hey, it's Claire. I didn't know if this was still your number. She paused. A breath. The sound of her swallowing hard. I've been staying with a friend. Well, someone who is a friend. Long story. I don't want anything. I just. Another pause. I passed by your building yesterday. I didn't come up. I just stood across the street for a while. I don't know why I'm even leaving this. Maybe because I don't know how to say I was wrong. She took another shaky breath. I didn't realize what I'd done. Not really. Not until it happened to me. Until someone told me I was just extra. And it hit me, those were your words once. And I didn't listen. Silence. Then, almost too quiet to hear. I'm sorry. Click. I stood there for a long time, phone still in hand, bread forgotten on the counter. The voicemail played again automatically. I let it. Not because I needed to hear the apology, I didn't. But because I needed to hear that tone. The break in her voice. It wasn't performance. It wasn't manipulation. It was real. I didn't call her back. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because there was nothing else to say. The apology wasn't mine to accept. It was hers to carry. I walked out onto the balcony and sat with the quiet. The city moved around me, buses groaning, a dog barking down the street, someone arguing into a phone. Life buzzing as usual. Maya showed up an hour later, balancing her bag on one shoulder and holding two coffees in one hand like a magician. She kicked off her shoes, sat beside me, and asked, "Everything good?" I nodded. "Yeah. Actually, yeah." She leaned her head on my shoulder and sipped her drink. "You look like a man who just closed a chapter." I smiled. Something like that. We didn't talk about the voicemail. I didn't need to. Sometimes, the best closure isn't a conversation. It's the life you've built since the door slammed shut. And mine? It was quiet. Steady. Rooted. No longer temporary.